On a lonely stretch of highway, as dusk painted the sky amber, Sarah Mitchell stood beside her stranded luxury sedan, designer heels sinking into gravel. The evening commute had long since passed, leaving only the whisper of wind and distant cicadas. When a weathered tow truck pulled up, she met the kind eyes of Alex Thompson, a small-town mechanic whose gentle demeanor put her instantly at ease. "Don't be sad," he said, his voice carrying years of wisdom. "I'll fix your car right here." As he worked by flashlight, she found herself drawn to his quiet strength and humble expertise. That roadside breakdown should have been just another inconvenience in her carefully ordered life as a secret billionaire CEO. Instead, it became the moment everything changed. What mystical force brought these two souls together on that fateful evening? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The beam of Alex's flashlight cut through the gathering darkness as he reached for his weathered toolbox, its scratched surface telling stories of countless repairs and midnight rescues. Sarah watched as his hands, strong yet careful, moved with practiced precision over her engine. The toolbox had been his father's, she would later learn, passed down along with lessons in both mechanics and life. "Timing belt's gone," he explained, his voice gentle but certain. "Not your fault. These models, they need changing at specific intervals." He glanced up at her, noticing how she hugged herself against the evening chill. Without a word, he returned to his truck and brought back a clean shop jacket. "Here, might not match your outfit, but it'll keep you warm." Sarah slipped into the jacket, surprised by its warmth and the faint scent of coffee and motor oil. She'd expected to feel uncomfortable, stranded here with a stranger, but something about Alex's presence put her at ease. Perhaps it was the methodical way he worked, or how he explained each step without condescension. "You don't have to stay," he offered, wiping his hands on a red shop rag. "I can drive you into town. Come back for the car." "I'd rather stay," she found herself saying, surprising them both. "If you don't mind the company." Alex's smile crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Coffee in my thermos, if you'd like some. It's not fancy, but it's hot." They shared the coffee as he worked, its warmth spreading through her hands. Sarah discovered herself opening up about her day, editing carefully around the board meetings and corporate acquisitions, while Alex listened, offering occasional insights that revealed a wisdom she hadn't expected. "Sometimes," he said, adjusting something deep in the engine, "breakdowns happen right when we need them most." His eyes met hers briefly. "Forces us to slow down, see things we might have missed at full speed." The truth of his words settled in her chest. When was the last time she'd simply stood still, watching the stars emerge? Her world was all fluorescent lights and deadlines, spreadsheets and shareholders. But here, in the growing dark, with the cricket chorus rising, she felt strangely present. Alex worked steadily, his movements sure and purposeful. He didn't rush, didn't check his watch or phone. Each tool was returned to its precise place. In the toolbox, each step completed with careful attention. Sarah found herself drawn to this different rhythm of life, so unlike her usual frenetic pace. "Tell me about your work," she ventured, genuinely curious. "How long have you been doing this?" 27 years, he replied, pride evident in his voice. "Started learning from my father when I was 12, took over the shop when he retired. Every car has its own personality, its own story, like people that way." He spoke about engines and transmissions with the same reverence others might reserve for art or music. His knowledge wasn't just technical, it was deeply human, wrapped in stories about the people whose lives depended on their vehicles. "There," he said finally, closing the hood with a gentle click. "Should get you home safe now." He wiped his hands again, this time more thoroughly. "Go ahead, start her up." Sarah slid behind the wheel, turned the key. The engine purred to life, smooth and strong. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by an unexpected reluctance to leave. "What do I owe you?" she asked, reaching For her purse, Alex shook his head, that gentle smile returning. "Consider it my good deed for the day. Just promise you'll get that timing belt serviced properly soon." "I can't let you," she began, but he held up a hand. "Seeing someone's relief when their car starts up, that's payment enough. Besides," he added, gathering his tools, "maybe next time you're passing through, you'll stop by the shop for a proper checkup. 3rd Street in town. Can't miss it." As Sarah drove away, her rearview mirror filled with the image of Alex loading his toolbox back into his truck, she found herself hoping there would indeed be a next time. The shop jacket still wrapped around her shoulders, forgotten in the moment of departure, would give her the perfect excuse to return. Morning light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows as Sarah crossed the marble lobby of Mitchell Enterprises, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Her corporate ID badge swung from its leather lanyard, the embossed CEO title catching. The light. Yesterday's roadside encounter felt like a dream, yet Alex's shop jacket still hung in her car, carrying the lingering scent of honest work. "Morning, Miss Mitchell." Her assistant Thomas hurried alongside her, tablet in hand. "The board's waiting in the main conference room. Quarterly projections are up 7%, but Harrison wants to discuss the Asian market expansion." She nodded, only half listening. Her mind kept drifting to the way Alex had explained the timing belt, his quiet confidence so different from the posturing she encountered daily in these halls. The conference room fell silent as she entered. 12 faces turned expectantly toward her, each representing billions in investor capital. Harrison, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, sat at the far end, his expression carefully neutral. "Gentlemen," she took her seat, pushing thoughts of last night aside, "shall we begin?" But as the meeting progressed, as charts and projections flashed across screens and voices debated market strategies, Sarah found herself increasingly distracted. She caught her reflection in the window. Perfectly tailored suit, expertly styled hair, and remembered how naturally she'd slipped into Alex's work jacket, how genuine his smile had been. "Miss Mitchell," Harrison's voice cut through her reverie, "your thoughts on the Shanghai proposal?" She straightened, switching seamlessly back into CEO mode. "The numbers are promising, but we're overlooking the human element. What do we know about the local community impact?" The question surprised them. It wasn't her usual approach. But something about last night had shifted her perspective, made her see beyond pure profit margins. Later, alone in her office, Sarah found herself Googling Thompson Auto Repair. The website was simple, functional, with a photo of Alex standing before his shop. He looked exactly as she remembered, that same quiet dignity in his stance. Customer reviews spoke of his fairness, his expertise, his willingness to help in emergencies. Her fingers traced the image on the screen. In her world, of mergers and acquisitions, of power plays and hidden agendas, his straightforward honesty felt like a breath of fresh air. The intercom buzzed. "Miss Mitchell, your 3 o'clock is here." Sarah minimized the browser window, but couldn't minimize the growing certainty that she needed to see him again. Not just to return the jacket, though that would be her excuse, but to experience more of that peaceful presence, that genuine connection she'd felt on the highway. The rest of her day passed in a blur of meetings and decisions, each hour drawing her further back into her familiar corporate rhythm. Yet, underneath, it all ran a current of anticipation, a sense that something fundamental had shifted in her carefully ordered world. That evening, as her driver navigated through city traffic, Sarah found herself holding her corporate ID badge, studying her own image. CEO, philanthropist, Forbes cover subject, titles that defined her public identity. But last night, standing beside her broken-down car, she'd just been Sarah. And somehow that had felt more real than all of this. She made a decision. Tomorrow she would find a reason to drive past 3rd Street, just to check if Alex's shop was as unassuming as its website suggested, just to return his jacket, just to say thank you properly. At least, that's what she told herself as she drifted off to sleep, the memory of his kind eyes following her into dreams. Sarah sat in her parked Mercedes around the corner from Thompson Auto Repair, a manufactured maintenance report on her passenger seat. She'd spent an embarrassing amount of time crafting this moment, even having her regular mechanic create a legitimate-looking document suggesting her car needed a routine check after the timing belt incident. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, smoothing her casual designer sweater, carefully chosen to look expensive but not ostentatious. At 45, she'd managed billion-dollar deals with less nervousness than this orchestrated coincidence. The shop stood exactly as its website had shown, a well-maintained brick building with 3 service bays, each occupied by vehicles in various states of repair. The sign above read simply, "Thompson Auto Repair, Esterman 1973, its weathered letters, speaking of history and permanence. Taking a deep breath, she pulled into the small parking area. His jacket lay folded neatly on top of the maintenance report, though she'd had to resist the urge to have it professionally cleaned. The office door chimed as she entered. An older woman looked up from behind the counter, her grey hair pulled back in a practical bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. Her name tag read Margaret. "Welcome to Thompson's," she smiled warmly. "How can we help you today?" Before Sarah could respond, a familiar voice called from the garage. "I thought I recognized that engine sound." Alex appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a shop rag. His smile was exactly as she remembered. "The prodigal jacket returns," he said, eyes twinkling. "Though I had a feeling we might see you again." Something in his tone made Sarah wonder if he'd seen through her pretense already. "My regular mechanic suggested a follow-up check," she said, holding up the report with what she hoped was casual professionalism. "Since I was passing through." "Of course," he nodded, taking the report. As he read it, Sarah noticed Margaret watching their interaction with poorly concealed interest. "I can take a look right now if you'd like to wait." The next hour passed in a comfortable blur. Alex worked methodically, explaining each step as before, while Sarah found herself sharing more about her life, still edited, but more genuine than she'd intended. She learned that Margaret was Alex's aunt, helping with the books since his father's retirement. "Dad started this shop when I was 5, Alex told her, checking her fluid levels. "Taught me everything I know about cars and people. He always said both need regular maintenance and honest attention." "He sounds wise," Sarah said, watching his capable hands at work. "He is. Still comes by most days, though he claims it's just for Margaret's coffee." His smile turned reflective. "You know, he's the one who insisted on keeping the emergency service running, even though it's not the most profitable part of the business. Someone's always going to need help on a dark highway, he'd say." Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Lucky for me, he did." Their eyes met briefly, and something unspoken passed between them. Alex cleared his throat, returning to his inspection. "Everything looks good here. That timing belt should serve you well for a while." "How much do I owe you?" This time she was prepared to insist on paying. "For a quick check? Nothing at all." He held up a hand as she began to protest. "But if you're serious about maintenance, you might want to consider regular service. These models do better with consistent attention." The invitation in his words was clear, and Sarah found herself nodding. "I'd like that. Should I call for an appointment, or you can check with Margaret, or just stop by?" He hesitated, then added, "Sometimes it's nice having someone to talk to while I work. Most people just drop their cars and go." "I'll remember that," she said softly. As she drove away, Sarah caught sight of Alex in her rear-view mirror again, but this time he was watching her leave. Margaret stood beside him, saying something that made him shake his head and smile. For the first time in years, Sarah felt the stirring of something she'd thought long buried under spreadsheets and stockholder meetings: possibility. Sarah's morning routine was interrupted by the business section of the local newspaper, dropped casually on her desk by Thomas. There, in stark black and white, was her corporate headshot, alongside the headline, "Mitchell Enterprises CEO announces." Revolutionary Green Energy Initiative. The photo showed her in her public persona, sharp suit, confident smile, every hair in place. Nothing like the woman who'd spent yesterday afternoon sitting on a worn office chair in Thompson's auto repair, listening to Alex explain the intricacies of fuel injection systems. "The Journal wants an exclusive follow-up," Thomas said. "And the board's asking about your afternoon disappearances." Sarah stared at the article, her stomach tightening. It was only a matter of time before someone connected the dots. A CEO of her status didn't just vanish for hours to visit a small-town auto shop. The business world was too small, too interconnected for secrets. She'd been visiting Alex's shop regularly for 3 weeks now, finding increasingly creative reasons. For maintenance checks. Each visit peeled away another layer of pretense between them, revealing connections that went far deeper than car repairs. Yesterday, he'd mentioned his volunteer work at the local youth center, teaching basic auto maintenance to teenagers. "Gives them skills, sure," he'd said, adjusting a valve with practiced ease. "But more importantly, it gives them somewhere to belong. Everyone needs that." The simple wisdom of his words had touched something in her, making her corporate achievements feel suddenly hollow in comparison. Her phone buzzed, a text from Margaret. "Oil change today. Alex has a free slot at 2. The casual message belied the warmth that had grown between Sarah and Alex's aunt. Margaret had taken to keeping a special blend of tea just for Sarah's visits, serving it in a chipped mug that had somehow become hers. "Miss Mitchell?" Thomas hovered uncertainly. "About the Journal. Push it to next week," she said, making a decision, "and clear my afternoon." But as she drove toward the shop later, the newspaper article rode in her passenger seat like an accusation. Every mile marker seemed to ask, "What are you doing? How long can you keep pretending?" Alex was waiting, wiping his hands on a rag, that now familiar smile warming his features. "There's my favorite mystery woman," he said, the nickname hitting closer to home than he knew. "Mystery?" She tried to keep her voice light. "Well, you know more about my life than most people in town, but somehow you've managed to tell me almost nothing about what you actually do." His tone was gentle, curious, rather than accusatory. Pretty impressive, actually. Sarah's heart stuttered. "I'm not that interesting," she managed, but the lie tasted bitter. "See, I doubt that." He leaned against the car, his eyes kind but searching. "The way you analyze that supply chain issue I was having with parts, that's not casual business. Knowledge. You've got a good heart, Sarah, but you're carrying something heavy. I can see it in your eyes sometimes." The tenderness in his voice nearly undid her. Here was a man who fixed broken things for a living, offering to help repair whatever weight she carried, and she couldn't let him, because the truth would change everything. "Alex, she started, but was interrupted by the rumble of a tow truck pulling in, dragging a battered pickup behind it. "Sorry," he straightened, professional instincts taking over. "Old Joe's truck, been giving him trouble all week." "Go," she said, relief and regret warring in her chest. "We can talk later." As she watched him greet Joe, an elderly farmer she'd met on a previous visit, Sarah realized she was running out of time. The careful boundary between her worlds was crumbling, and soon she'd have to choose or have the choice made for her. The newspaper article seemed to burn in her car, a reminder that some truths couldn't stay hidden forever, not when the heart was involved. The basic car repair manual sat open on Alex's workbench, its pages worn soft with use. Sarah stood beside him, sleeves rolled up, as he guided her hands through the process of changing her own oil. The afternoon. Sun slanted through the garage door, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. "See how the oil catches the light." Alex's voice was close to her ear. "When it's clean, it's amber, like honey. When it needs changing, it gets dark, almost black." Sarah nodded, hyper-aware of his presence behind her, his hands bracketing hers on the dipstick. She'd insisted on learning basic maintenance, partly as an excuse to spend more time at the shop, but mostly because she was genuinely curious about his world. "My turn to teach you something," she said, straightening up. "Show me your books." Alex raised an eyebrow but led her to the office, where Margaret kept the shop's accounts in both a computer system and old-fashioned ledgers. Sarah had noticed some inefficiencies in their booking system, places where they were leaving money on the table through outdated practices. "Look here," she pointed to a column of numbers. "You're losing profit on emergency calls because you're not factoring in all the overhead costs." She walked him through a basic cost analysis, surprised by how quickly he grasped the concepts. "You've got a good head for business," he observed, studying her with those perceptive eyes. "Where'd you learn all this?" She hesitated, then offered a partial truth. "I've worked in corporate finance for years. Numbers. They tell stories if you know how to read them. Like engines." He nodded. "They tell you what's wrong if you listen right." He ran a hand through his grey-streaked hair, considering. Would you mind looking over our whole system? Only if you have time, of course." The trust in his request touched her. "I'd love to." They fell into a rhythm over the next few hours, she explaining business principles, he sharing mechanical wisdom. When Margaret brought them coffee, she found them huddled over the manual and ledger together, heads close, lost in conversation. "The youth centre could use this kind of thinking," Alex mentioned casually. "We're always struggling with the budget, trying to stretch dollars further." Sarah's heart warmed at the we. She'd learned how much of himself he poured into that centre, teaching kids skills that could lead to honest work. "Tell me more about it," she encouraged. As he described the programs, his face lit with passion. She found herself scribbling notes. Here was a place where her business acumen could make a real difference, not just to profit margins, but to people's lives. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "there are grants available for programs like this. Companies looking to invest in community education." She didn't mention that her own corporation had such a program. "Really?" His eyes brightened. "Would you help me look into that?" "Of course." She smiled, then gestured back to the car. "If you'll teach me about brake pads next." "Deal." He extended his hand playfully, and she shook it, trying to ignore the spark that ran through her at his touch. As the day waned, they returned to her car, Alex quizzing her good-naturedly about what they'd covered. "Oil changes, tire rotation, basic diagnostics," he listed. "You're becoming quite the mechanic. And you're turning into a businessman," she teased back. "Pretty soon you won't need me around at all." His expression turned serious. "I wouldn't say that." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Sarah busied herself gathering her things, afraid her face would betray too much. The manual caught her eye, and she picked it up, running her fingers over its worn cover. "Take it," Alex said softly. "Study up for next time." She hugged the book to her chest, this tangible piece of his world that she could carry into hers. "Thank you." As she drove home, the manual on her passenger seat, Sarah realized she was no longer just playing a role. Somewhere between the oil changes and budget discussions, she'd found a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing. The community center donation box sat prominently on Margaret's counter, its hand-painted surface depicting smiling wrenches and tools. "Every penny helps a kid learn," read the careful lettering, and Sarah had noticed how Alex quietly slipped his emergency call fees into it when customers couldn't pay full price. Today, the shop was buzzing with unusual activity. Local teenagers in matching grey t-shirts, Thompson's youth auto program, printed across the back, moved purposefully between the service bays, Alex supervising with patient attention. "Mid-term evaluations," Margaret explained, noting Sarah's interest. "They've been working up to this for months." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Alex loses sleep over these kids, wants every one of them to succeed." Sarah watched as Alex demonstrated a complex diagnostic procedure. His students clustered around him. She recognized Carlos, a quiet 16-year-old who'd been struggling with the theoretical portions but showed natural talent with repairs. Alex had spent extra hours tutoring him, refusing to let him give up. "Miss Sarah," Carlos spotted her, waving enthusiastically, "come see what Mr. T taught us." She found herself drawn into their excitement, examining their projects as they proudly explained their work. These weren't the troubled teens the community had labeled them. In Alex's garage, they were skilled apprentices, their eyes bright, with purpose. "They're amazing," she told Alex during a quiet moment. "You've given them so much more than just auto skills." He shook his head, humble as always. "I just give them a chance. They do the hard work." He hesitated, then added, "Actually, I could use your help. The center's facing some budget cuts. I was hoping you might look at those grant applications we discussed." Before Sarah could respond, a commotion erupted from the back bay. Tommy, one of the newer students, had accidentally knocked over a tool cart. Tools scattered across the floor as the boy stood frozen, fear evident in his face. Sarah expected anger, harsh words, the reaction such mistakes usually earned in her corporate world. Instead, Alex calmly walked over, placed a steady hand on Tommy's shoulder. "You know what my dad always said about drop tools?" he asked, his voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet garage. "Said they're just eager to get back to work. Let's get them sorted, check for damage, make it a lesson in inventory management." The tension dissolved as everyone pitched in to help. Sarah found herself working alongside Maria, a bright 17-year-old who dreamed of opening her own shop someday. "Mr. T's teaching us business stuff too," Maria confided, carefully checking each wrench for damage. "Says knowing how to fix. Ours isn't enough if we can't run a proper business." Sarah smiled, recognizing her own influence in this new addition to the curriculum. "He's a good teacher." "The best," Maria agreed. Then added hesitantly, "We all see how happy you make him. Miss Sarah, he smiles more since you started coming around." The simple observation caught Sarah off guard. She'd been so focused on keeping her world separate, she hadn't noticed how thoroughly she'd become part of this one. Later, as the students prepared to leave, she watched Alex give each one a personal word of encouragement. Carlos lingered behind, clutching a worn textbook. "Having trouble with the calculations again?" Alex asked gently. "Yeah, but—" Carlos glanced at Sarah. "Miss Sarah explained some stuff last week about profit margins. It really helped. Maybe she could— if she's not too busy, I'd be happy to help," Sarah said quickly, her heart warming at the boy's shy request. "We could set up a regular study session if Alex doesn't mind us using the office." Alex's smile was answer enough. As they watched Carlos leave, homework plans made for the following week, Sarah felt an unfamiliar contentment settle over her. In her corporate life, success was measured in stock prices and market share. Here, it was measured in renewed confidence, in young lives finding direction, in a community coming together. "Thank you," Alex said quietly, "for everything you're doing here." The gratitude in his eyes made her secret identity weigh even heavier. These people had welcomed her, trusted her, made her part of their world. How much longer could she keep pretending to be less than she was? The board meeting. Minutes lay spread across Sarah's mahogany desk, each page marked with yellow sticky notes and red underlines. One phrase kept jumping out: CEO's concerning pattern of unavailability. Harrison had made sure those words appeared 3 times in the official record. "They're asking questions I can't deflect anymore," Thomas said, hovering anxiously by. Her desk. "Harrison's team has been tracking your afternoon absences. They've noticed you're taking different routes home, driving yourself more often." He hesitated. "There are rumors." Sarah's hand tightened on her pen. "What kind of rumors?" "That you're meeting with rival companies, planning a hostile takeover. Some think you're preparing to step down." He lowered his voice. "Harrison's hired private investigators." The news hit her like a physical blow. She thought of Alex's garage, of Carlos's study sessions, of Margaret's knowing smile, all of it threatened by corporate paranoia and power plays. "The Asian expansion. Meeting is in 30 minutes, Thomas reminded her gently. "Harrison's prepared a full presentation on why we need you in Shanghai for the next 3 months. 3 months. Sarah's chest tightened. 3 months away from the garage, from the youth program from Alex. She couldn't do it. But how could she explain that to the board without revealing everything? The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Harrison is requesting a pre-meeting briefing." She stood, smoothing her suit jacket, armor for the corporate battlefield. "Tell him I'll be right there." Harrison waited in the small conference room, silver hair immaculate, smile calculating. "Sarah, we need to talk about your future with Mitchell Enterprises." The words were friendly, the threat beneath them was clear. She'd built this company from her father's modest foundation into a global powerhouse. She wouldn't let anyone take it from her, not even to protect her growing feelings for a small-town mechanic. "The board is concerned," Harrison continued, sliding a folder across the table. "Your afternoon disappearances, your sudden interest in local community programs, your reluctance to commit to the Shanghai project." His eyes narrowed. "If there's something we should know, my personal time is my own, James." She kept her voice level. "The company's performance hasn't suffered." "No," he agreed. "In fact, some of your recent decisions, the green energy initiative, the community investment programs, have been surprisingly successful, almost as if you've gained a new perspective on local impacts." Sarah felt a chill. How much did he know? She thought of Alex's youth program, of the grant application she'd been secretly fast-tracking through her company's foundation. "I've always believed in community investment," she said carefully. Harrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course. But as CEO, your community is global, Sarah. Singapore, Shanghai, Seoul." He tapped the folder. 3 months in Asia would reinforce that perspective. The threat was clearer now. "Go to Shanghai, or we'll find out what you're really doing with your afternoons." Back in her office, Sarah sank into her chair, the weight of her 2 worlds crushing down. On her phone, a text from Margaret. "Carlos got an A on his business math test. He can't wait to tell you." Her eyes burned. When had that garage become more real to her than this tower of glass and steel? When had Alex's quiet wisdom begun to mean more than Harrison's polished threats? The board meeting minutes mocked her from the desk. Somewhere in this city, private investigators were probably already photographing her car outside Alex's garage, documenting every minute she spent in that other life. She had choices to make, and soon. But first, she had a board meeting to survive. Straightening her shoulders, Sarah gathered the minutes into a neat pile. She'd built this company by making hard decisions. She'd find a way to protect both her worlds. She had to. For now, though, she had to be Sarah Mitchell, CEO, and try not to think about the simple happiness waiting in a garage across town, happiness that was slipping through her fingers like sand. The half-written resignation letter glowed on Sarah's laptop screen, its cursor blinking accusingly in the dim light of her home office. "After careful consideration, I have decided to step down as CEO of Mitchell Enterprises," the words felt, both terrifying and liberating. Her phone buzzed, a text from Alex. "Shop's quiet this evening. Stop by if you're free. Need your thoughts on something." Sarah glanced at the resignation letter once more before closing her laptop. She'd been drafting and deleting versions of it all week, ever since Harrison's ultimatum. Tonight, she'd made up her mind. Before the Shanghai decision could be forced on her, she would tell Alex everything. The garage was peaceful in the evening. Light, its broad doors rolled up to catch the summer breeze. Alex sat at his workbench, reading glasses perched on his nose, studying what looked like grant paperwork. He looked up when she entered, his smile warming her straight through. "Perfect timing. I wanted to run something by you." He patted the stool beside him. "But first, you okay? You seem different tonight." Sarah settled beside him, their shoulders nearly touching. "Alex, I need to tell you something." Her heart thundered in her chest. "I haven't been completely honest about—" "Mr. T!" Carlos burst through the door, face flushed with excitement. "We got it! The youth center got the grant." He waved a letter, then stopped short, seeing Sarah. "Oh, Miss Sarah, you're here too. Perfect. You helped so much with the application." Alex took the letter, his eyes scanning quickly. "Full funding for the next 3 years," he breathed. "Equipment upgrades, scholarships, everything we asked for." He looked at Sarah, joy radiating from his features. "This is incredible. How did it happen so fast? These things usually take months." Sarah's throat tightened. She'd expedited the grant through her company's foundation, pulling strings she'd sworn she'd never pull. "Sometimes things just work out," she managed. "This changes everything," Carlos exclaimed. "Wait till Maria hears. She was so worried about affording the advanced certification courses." Alex was still watching Sarah, something shifting in his expression. "It does seem like an amazing coincidence," he said quietly. "The grant coming through right when we needed it most." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions. Sarah opened her mouth, ready to finally tell him everything, when Margaret's voice cut through from the office. "Alex, emergency call, bad accident out on Highway 23, multiple vehicles involved." The transformation was immediate. Alex stood, already reaching for his emergency kit. "Carlos, call the backup team. Sarah," he hesitated, "rain check on that." "Matalk?" She nodded, heart sinking. "Go. People need you." As Alex's tow truck roared into the gathering dusk, Sarah found herself alone in the garage. The grant approval letter lay on the workbench where he'd left it, Mitchell Enterprises logo, clearly visible in the header. She picked it up with trembling fingers. Soon he would look more closely, would see her company's name, might even Google it. The truth was unraveling, thread by thread. Margaret appeared in the doorway. "You were going to tell him tonight, weren't you?" Sarah's head snapped up. "You know?" The older woman's smile was gentle. "Honey, I've known since the second week. I may be old, but I can still read a newspaper." She came closer, resting a weathered hand on Sarah's shoulder. "He'll understand, you know. Alex values truth, yes, but he values heart more. And your heart's been true, even when your words weren't." Tears pricked at Sarah's eyes. "I'm afraid everything will change." "Everything already has changed," Margaret said softly. "The only question is whether you're brave enough to face it." The resignation letter waited on her laptop at home. The board meeting loomed tomorrow. And somewhere on Highway 23, Alex was helping strangers in the dark, not knowing that his whole world was about to shift. Sarah touched the grant letter one last time before heading home. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she would tell him everything. She just prayed it wouldn't be too late. The emergency repair order form trembled in Margaret's hands as she read the details to the gathered crowd in the garage. 3 semis jackknifed on Highway 23, chemical spill. They've evacuated 4 blocks of Cedar Heights. That's most of our kids' families. Alex stood at the center of the group, already organizing his response. The youth program students clustered. Around him, faces tight with worry. Carlos's grandmother lived in Cedar Heights. So did Maria's entire family. "The evacuation center needs transportation," Margaret continued, "and they're short on supplies. Alex, they're asking if we can help with emergency vehicle repairs. First responders are burning through their equipment. We'll set up a mobile repair station," Alex decided. "Carlos, Maria, get the portable tools loaded. Tommy, call everyone in from last year's class who has pickup trucks." He turned to Sarah, who had arrived moments after hearing the news. "I hate to ask, but we could use your business sense here. We need to coordinate resources, track expenses for emergency funding." Sarah's mind was already racing. She could do so much more than track expenses. One phone call to Mitchell Enterprises' emergency response team could have supplies, transportation, and a hazmat crew there within hours. Her corporate connections could expedite everything from hotel vouchers to insurance claims. But making that call would expose her identity to everyone. "The chemical spill," she asked carefully. "What kind of containment equipment are they using?" "Whatever the local fire department has," Alex replied. "It's not enough. They're waiting for specialized crews from the city." Sarah checked her phone. Mitchell Enterprises had a hazmat team just 40 minutes away, pre-positioned for one of their green energy projects. "Mr. T," Carlos called urgently. Just heard from my grandmother. They're not letting people take their cars out of the evacuation zone. Everyone's walking to the center, even the elderly. Alex ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. We've got 3 working buses in the shop for repairs, but legally we can't use them without the owner's permission. Sarah thought of the fleet of corporate shuttle buses sitting idle in her company's parking garage. One call. Alex! She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I might be able to help, really help, but... She glanced at the crowded garage. Things will change. He met her eyes, understanding dawning. You're more than just someone who worked in corporate finance, aren't you? Before she could respond, Maria burst in. The evacuation center's roof is leaking. They're losing half their space. People are going to be sleeping in the parking lot. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. The Mitchell Foundation owned 3 empty residential buildings in this area, newly renovated for a future development project. Sarah, Alex's voice was gentle but urgent. Whatever you're holding back, if you can help these people, that's all that matters right now. She looked around the garage at the faces she'd grown to care about. Carlos worried about his grandmother, Maria making lists of needed supplies, Tommy coordinating with other students on his phone. These weren't just faces in a crowd anymore. This was her community too. Margaret, she straightened her shoulders, I need to use your office phone. And Alex? She met his eyes. You might want to hear this call. It's time you knew who I really... The emergency repair order sat on Margaret's desk as Sarah reached for the phone. Such a simple form, requesting help for a community in crisis. It had become the catalyst that would change everything. She dialed her office number, hand steady now. Thomas, this is Sarah Mitchell. I need you to activate our emergency response. Protocol. She felt Alex's sharp intake of breath beside her. Yes, full corporate resources, and Thomas, send everything we have. The die was cast. Outside, she could hear the youth program students mobilizing, their voices charged with purpose. They needed more than she could give them as just Sarah, the mechanic's friend. They needed Sarah Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell Enterprises, with all the power and resources that identity carried. She only hoped that when the dust settled, when her secret was fully exposed, she wouldn't lose the family she'd found in this humble garage. She turned to face Alex, ready to finally tell him everything. The local news website's headline blazed across Margaret's computer screen. Mitchell Enterprises CEO Sarah Mitchell leads emergency response in Cedar Heights. Below it, a photo showed Sarah directing operations at the evacuation center, still, wearing the Thompson Auto Shop jacket over her business clothes. The garage had fallen silent. The youth program students clustered around smartphones and tablets, reading article after article about their Ms. Sarah, about the billionaire CEO who had been quietly spending afternoons in their garage, helping with homework, offering business advice, becoming part of their family. Alex stood perfectly still, one hand resting on his toolbox, staring at the grant approval letter he'd finally read properly. The Mitchell Enterprises logo seemed to glow against the paper. So, he said quietly, CEO of Mitchell Enterprises. Yes. Sarah forced herself to meet his eyes. The emergency response teams had arrived in force, hazmat crews, mobile command centers, fleet vehicles. The immediate crisis was under control. Now came the harder part. All those afternoons, watching me teach you about timing belts and brake pads. His voice held something she couldn't quite read. You probably have mechanics who make more in a month than I do in a year. I wanted to tell you so many times. The words tumbled out. But at first it was just nice being Sarah. Just Sarah. Not Sarah Mitchell, the CEO. And then, as I got to know you, got to know this place. She gestured helplessly at the garage. I was afraid everything would change. Change? Carlos stepped forward, phone in hand. Ms. Sarah, do you know what we just read about your green energy projects? About the community development programs? He turned to Alex. Mr. T, she's been doing exactly what you teach us, using business to help people. Maria joined in. The article says she started in her father's garage, learning about cars just like us. That's why she understands everything so well. Alex held up a hand, silencing the excited chatter. Could we? He glanced at the students, then back to Sarah. Could we talk privately? They walked to the back office, away from the curious eyes. Through the window, Sarah could see the Mitchell Enterprises response teams efficiently managing the crisis she'd helped create a solution for. The corporate world and the garage world finally colliding. I understand if you're angry, she began. Angry? Alex's laugh surprised her. Sarah, I just watched you mobilize more resources in 10 minutes than this town has seen in a decade. You're using your power to help people who needed it. He shook his head. But I think I understand now why you kept it quiet. You do. You wanted to know if people would care about you, not your money or position. His eyes softened. And you wanted to know if I would. If you would see me, she finished quietly. Just me. He stepped closer. I've been seeing you all along. Sarah, the way you light up explaining business concepts to the kids. How you never let Carlos give up on his math. The genuine joy you take in learning about engines. His hand found hers. Money doesn't make a person who they are. Actions do. Outside, they could hear the students excitedly planning how the garage. Good work with Mitchell Enterprises. Their voices full of hope and possibility. Margaret's gentle laughter floated through the walls. I was going to resign, Sarah admitted. The board wanted to send me to Shanghai for 3 months. I was writing my resignation letter when you texted me tonight. And now? Now? She squared her shoulders. Now I think it's time Mitchell Enterprises had a more local focus. These kids, this community, they matter. You matter. What about the board? Harrison. She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Let them try to stop me. I built that company by believing in people, in community. I just forgot that for a while. She squeezed his hand. You helped me remember. A soft knock interrupted. Them. Margaret poked her head in. Sorry, but the mayor's here. He's asking for Ms. Mitchell. She paused, eyes twinkling. And Alex, dear, you might want to see this. The Youth Center grant. It's trending on social media. People are calling it a model for corporate community partnership. Alex and Sarah shared a look, both beginning to laugh. The truth was out. The worlds had merged, and somehow, impossibly, it felt right. The closed sign hung askew on the garage door, looking oddly final in the morning light. Alex had put it up after the 3rd news van arrived, their cameras and microphones turning the quiet shop into a circus. Inside, he sat at his workbench, trying to focus on a routine repair, while his phone buzzed endlessly with messages and calls. Channel 7 wants an exclusive, Margaret announced, peeking through the blinds. They're calling it The Billionaire and the Mechanic, like some sort of fairy tale. Alex set down his wrench. Any word from Sarah? She's in an emergency board. Meeting. Harrison's apparently having kittens over the whole thing. Margaret's smile was fierce. Serves him right, the old vulture. The youth program students had been texting all morning. Their messages a mix of excitement and concern. Would the program continue? Would Miss Sarah still help with their studies? Would everything change now that their small-town garage was in the national spotlight? Alex's phone buzzed again, a text from old Joe. That girl of yours sure knows how to make headlines. Always thought she was special. When you bringing her by for Sunday dinner? The simple acceptance in Joe's message made Alex's throat tight. But not everyone had been so understanding. He'd already lost 2 regular customers who felt deceived by Sarah's presence in the garage. The local business association was split between those excited about the possible opportunities and those suspicious of corporate influence. You should see social media, Tommy said, hunched over his laptop in the corner. They'd let the kids in through the back door, the garage becoming a refuge from the media storm. Some people are saying terrible things about Miss Sarah, calling her fake and manipulative, but others are sharing stories about all the quiet help she's been giving around town. Alex remembered countless small moments. Sarah slipping extra money into the donation box, her careful guidance on grant applications, the way she'd helped Maria's mother navigate a complex insurance claim, all done quietly, without recognition. "Mr. T?" Carlos appeared at his elbow. "My grandmother wanted me to give you this." He held out a covered dish. "She says Ms. Sarah arranged for her whole apartment building to stay at the Riverside Hotel. During the evacuation, the fancy one says they were treated like royalty." The door chimed, despite the closed sign. Alex looked up to see Sarah entering through the back, looking exhausted but determined. She'd changed from her CEO power suit into jeans and a simple blouse, though she couldn't quite hide the elegance that came from years in corporate boardrooms. "Harrison's threatening to call an emergency shareholder meeting," she said without preamble. "He says my reckless behavior and inappropriate associations are damaging company credibility." Her smile was sharp. He shut up pretty quickly. "When I pointed out how much positive press the emergency response generated." The kids immediately surrounded her, questions tumbling over each other. Would the youth program expand? Could they visit the Mitchell Enterprises Tech Center? Would she still help with their business classes? "One thing at a time," she laughed, but Alex caught the worry in her eyes. She was trying to bridge two worlds, and the strain was showing. "Sarah," he said quietly, "we need to talk about what happens next." She nodded, and they stepped into the office, leaving Margaret to manage the excited teenagers. Through the window, they could see more reporters arriving, drawn by the allure of their unlikely story. "I'm not walking away," she said immediately. "Not from the garage, not from the kids, and not from you." She ran a hand through her hair, a gesture he'd come to know meant she was planning something. "But we need to be smart about this. The media attention will die down, but things can't go back to exactly how they were." "I know." Alex touched the closed sign. "Maybe they shouldn't. What you did last night, the way you helped the community, that happened because of who you are, all of who you are, not just the Sarah who helps with homework, but the Sarah who can mobilize corporate resources in minutes." She stepped closer, hope flickering in her eyes. "You mean that? I'm not saying it will be easy. Some people will take time to adjust. But Sarah," he took her hand, remembering the first night on the highway when she was just a stranded motorist and he was just a mechanic. "We'll figure it out together." Outside, they could hear Tommy defending Sarah to a reporter through the door. "You don't know her like we do. She's family now." And really, Alex thought, that was what mattered. Most unfinished projects lay scattered across Alex's workbench. A timing belt half installed, brake pads still in their box, Carlos's practice engine partially dismantled. The abandoned work spoke of interrupted rhythms, of routines suddenly broken. It had been a week since Sarah's identity was revealed, and the garage felt emptier than Alex had ever known it. "She's on CNBC right now," Margaret called from the office, where the small TV had become a window into Sarah's other world. "Fighting. For us, by the looks of it." Alex watched from the doorway as Sarah, elegant in a charcoal suit, faced down the business news anchors with the same quiet confidence she'd shown learning about carburetors. "Mitchell Enterprises is evolving," she was saying. "Our community investment initiative isn't charity, it's smart business. These youth programs aren't just creating skilled workers. They're building relationships that benefit everyone involved." The ticker below showed Mitchell Enterprises' stock price climbing as she spoke. Harrison's feared shareholder revolt hadn't materialized. If anything, Sarah's authentic connection to a local community had resonated with investors tired of faceless corporate entities. But the victory had come at a price. Security concerns and media attention had made casual visits to the garage impossible. The youth program continued, but without Sarah's regular presence. Her absence felt like a missing gear, throwing off the whole machine's rhythm. She misses this place, Margaret said softly, noting Alex's expression. Called this morning before the show. Asked about everyone. Carlos's test results, Maria's certification progress, even old Joe's truck repairs. The students felt it too. They still worked hard, still learned, but their eyes would drift to the empty stool where Sarah used to sit, explaining market forces and profit margins in ways that made sense to young mechanics. Alex's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Watch. The end of the interview. Have something to announce. He turned back to the TV just as the anchor asked about her future plans. Mitchell Enterprises is launching a nationwide initiative, Sarah announced, her eyes somehow finding the camera, finding him. We're partnering with local auto repair shops and technical schools to create apprenticeship programs based on the model we've developed in Cedar Heights. But our flagship location, our proof of concept, will be Thompson Auto Repair. Alex's breath caught. This was the first he'd heard of it. Additionally, she continued, we're establishing a technical education foundation, providing scholarships and equipment to similar programs across the country. Because sometimes the most valuable innovations don't come from Silicon Valley. They come from small garages where dedicated people teach real skills with real heart. The anchor smiled professionally. And your personal involvement with Thompson. Auto repair? The media has been quite interested in your connection there. Sarah's composure didn't waver. Some things deserve to remain private. What matters is the work we're doing, the lives we're changing. The rest is just noise. The broadcast ended, but Alex kept staring at the screen. His phone buzzed again. Too much? Too soon? We don't have to do any of it if you're not ready. He looked around the garage, at the unfinished projects, at the students working quietly on their assignments, at the donation box still sitting on Margaret's counter. Everything was changing. But maybe that wasn't bad. Maybe, like an engine in need of an upgrade, change was exactly what they needed. She gets it, you know, Margaret said, turning off the TV. Why you haven't called much this week, why you needed space to think. It's not about the money or the program, Alex said quietly. It's about making sure we don't lose what made this place special in the first place. Oh, honey. Margaret's smile was knowing. What made this place special was never about what we did. It was about who we are. Sarah understood that from day one, CEO or not. Another text lit up his phone. The board meeting's over. Harrison's backing down. I can finally breathe again. Then, a moment later, I miss the smell of motor oil and coffee. Alex ran a hand over the unfinished projects on his workbench. They'd all been waiting for Sarah's input, he realized. Not because they needed a CEO's approval, but because they'd grown used to facing challenges together. Sometimes, he thought, you had to let an engine cool down before you could see what it really needed. Maybe this separation was like that, a chance to appreciate what they had and to figure out how to make it work better. He picked up his phone to text her back. The joint community project proposal sat between them on Alex's workbench, its fresh printing stark against the oil-stained surface. After 2 weeks of separation, they'd agreed to meet after hours, away from both media cameras and corporate scrutiny. Sarah had arrived just after sunset, looking both perfectly put together and somehow vulnerable in the garage's familiar lighting. It's ambitious, Alex said, studying the detailed plans. The proposal outlined a comprehensive technical education center with Thompson's Auto Repair as its heart. You're talking about transforming the whole neighborhood. Too much? Sarah watched his face carefully. She'd removed her suit jacket, rolled up her sleeves, corporate CEO becoming garage Sarah again. No, he said slowly, just making sure we don't lose what makes this place work. The personal touch, the individual attention. That's why you'd be in charge of curriculum and instruction. She pointed to a section he hadn't reached yet. Complete autonomy. The corporate side handles funding and expansion, but the soul of the program, that stays with you. Outside, the evening had settled into that peaceful time between day and night. Through the open garage door, they could hear crickets beginning their evening chorus. So like that first night on the highway. I've missed this, Sarah said softly. The quiet, the simplicity. She touched a wrench on the bench. The honesty of actual work. We've missed you too, the kids especially. Alex smiled, though they're pretty excited about your TV announcement. Maria's already planning how she'll run her own franchise someday. Sarah's laugh held a touch of relief. I was so nervous about that interview, trying to protect what we have here while still fighting for what it could become. She met his eyes. What we could become. The proposal between them was more than just a business plan. It was a blueprint for bringing their worlds together, for making something new without losing what made it precious in the first place. Carlos asked about you yesterday, Alex said. Not about Mitchell Enterprises or the program, just you. Wanted to know if you'd still help him with his college applications. Of course I will. Her voice was firm. That's non-negotiable. Like Sunday dinners at Old Joe's and Margaret's terrible coffee and... She hesitated. And whatever's growing between us. Alex reached across the workbench, took her hand. The gesture bridged more than physical distance. It connected the CEO and the mechanic, the corporate boardroom and the local garage, two people who'd found each other against impossible odds. I've been thinking, he said, about what you said on TV, about innovation coming from unexpected places. He gestured around the garage. Maybe that's true about love too. Sarah's breath caught. It was the first time either of them had used that word. The board's actually on board now, she said, squeezing his hand. Harrison's still suspicious, but the shareholders love the community angle. They're calling it conscious capitalism, or something equally corporate. She rolled her eyes, as if caring about people was some revolutionary business strategy. Isn't it, though? Alex tapped the proposal. Look what happened when you let yourself care about a broken-down car on the highway. They shared a smile, remembering that first meeting. Everything had changed since then, and nothing had changed at all. So, Sarah straightened, CEO mode mixing naturally with garage comfort now. Shall we look at the details? I want to make sure the expansion doesn't interfere with your current students' schedules. Together, they bent over the proposal, adding notes, making adjustments. Their worlds weren't just colliding anymore. They were crafting something new, something that took the best of both and made it better. Through the window, they could see Margaret pretending not to watch them, her smile saying everything about hope and second chances, and the way love could build bridges between any distance. The proposal was just paper and plans, but what they were really building was a future, one where a CEO could find joy in motor oil and coffee, and a mechanic could shape corporate policy with wisdom earned through genuine service. One where two people could be exactly who they were, together. The modified business plan lay open on Sarah's executive desk, motor oil fingerprints smudging its pristine edges. Alex had been reviewing it during his lunch break, making annotations in his precise mechanic's handwriting. Now, watching him move comfortably through her corporate office in his shop clothes, Sarah marveled at how natural it felt, this blending of their worlds. Your board members' faces, he chuckled, adjusting a framed photo of the garage crew that now sat prominently beside her industry awards. When I walked into the meeting in my work clothes, Harrison nearly swallowed his tie, Sarah agreed, remembering how her most vocal critic had been silenced by Alex's clear, practical presentation of their expanded community program. The past month had seen them carefully weaving their lives together, finding rhythm in the chaos. Mornings might find Sarah in a power suit at Mitchell Enterprises, but afternoons often saw her in jeans at the garage, working alongside students. Alex split his time between managing the expanding youth program and consulting on the corporate technical education initiative, his practical experience proving invaluable. Carlos called, Alex said, settling into what had become his chair. In her office, he got early acceptance to the engineering program, full scholarship. Sarah's face lit up. The first of many. The scholarship program they'd established was already attracting attention from other communities. How's Maria doing with the new business curriculum? Teaching it better than I could, Alex admitted. She's got a way of connecting corporate theory with practical garage experience that just makes sense. Their phones buzzed simultaneously. A group text from Margaret. Channel 5 did a follow-up story. The garage is packed with people wanting to sign up for classes. Send reinforcements. The media sensation had gradually transformed into genuine community interest. What had started as a billionaire romance story had become something more meaningful, a model for how business and community could genuinely support each other. We should head over, Sarah said, already reaching for her casual blazer, the one she kept ready for garage visits. But first, she pulled out a small box from her desk. I had something made for you. Inside was a key card, but not the usual corporate type. This one was custom designed, bearing both the Mitchell Enterprises logo and a small wrench symbol. Executive access, she explained, to everything. No more signing in as a visitor, no more security escorts. She met his eyes. I want you to be able to reach me anywhere, anytime, just like I can always come to the garage. Alex held the card carefully, understanding its significance. You're sure? The board, Sarah said firmly, has seen our quarterly reports. Community engagement up 300%, technical education enrollment breaking records. Harrison actually smiled yesterday. I thought his face might crack. They shared a laugh, but Alex's eyes were serious as he studied her. You've changed this place, he said. Not just the company, but the whole way they think about community impact. We've changed it, she corrected. Your integrity, your way of valuing people over profits, it's reshaping corporate culture from the inside out. A knock at the door interrupted them. Thomas poked his head in, long past being surprised at seeing a mechanic in the CEO's office. Sorry, but the governor's office is calling. They want to discuss implementing the program statewide. Sarah nodded. Give me 5 minutes. After Thomas left, she turned back to Alex. Coming to this meeting, we could use your practical perspective. Can't, he smiled. Got a timing belt lesson with the afternoon class, but, he held up the key card. Dinner later? I thought maybe we could try that fancy place you like. Show them a mechanic can clean up nice. Actually, Sarah said, I was thinking Old Joe's Diner. Show them a CEO knows good pie when she tastes it. Their laughter mingled naturally, filling the corporate office with the same warmth that made the garage feel like home. On her desk, the modified business plan waited for final approval, its wrinkled pages testifying to hours of genuine collaboration between two worlds that had turned out to be not so different after all. As they walked out together, him to his students, her to her meeting, they moved with the easy synchronization of people who had found their rhythm. The security guard nodded respectfully to them both, no longer fazed by the sight of work boots in the executive corridor. See you at home, Alex said simply, using his new key card for the first time. Home. The word encompassed both worlds now, the garage and the office, the corporate and the community, the mechanic and the CEO who had found love on a dark highway, and built something revolutionary from it. In the soft glow of the garage's evening lights, Alex turned the handcrafted ring over in his palm. He'd made it himself, fashioning it from a titanium spark plug component, working late into the night after Sarah had left for a business trip. The metal caught the light like a promise, its smooth surface interrupted by delicate engravings of tiny wrenches and gears. It's perfect, Margaret whispered, examining his handiwork. Like something from those hands built a path straight to her heart. The garage had been transformed. The students had helped him arrange everything, cleaning tools until they gleamed, stringing warm lights along the rafters. In the center of it all stood Sarah's car, the same luxury sedan that had broken down that fateful night on the highway. She'll be here soon, Carlos announced, rushing in from his lookout position. Tommy just saw her car turn onto Cedar Street. Alex touched the ring one last time before slipping it into his pocket. He'd considered 1,000 grander gestures, restaurants, helicopter rides, Everything you might expect a CEO to want, but in the end, he knew Sarah best here, in the place where she'd first let herself be truly known. The familiar sound of her engine approached. Right on schedule. She thought she was coming for a late celebration of Carlos's scholarship acceptance. Alex had even manufactured a small engine problem to ensure she'd drive herself instead of taking a corporate car. "Places, everyone!" Margaret herded the gathered crowd, students, family, garage regulars, into their hiding spots. Even old Joe had come, dressed in his Sunday best, clutching a pie he swore was special occasion worthy. Sarah's heels clicked on the concrete as she entered, then stopped abruptly. The garage was dark except for the strung lights and a single spotlight illuminating her car. Alex stepped into the light, still wearing his work clothes, his hands clean but bearing the honest marks of his trade. "Alex?" She looked around, taking in the transformed space. "What's your timing belt?" he said softly. "That first night, when it brought you to a stop on that highway. That wasn't just a mechanical failure. That was fate, giving an honest mechanic a chance to help a remarkable woman who'd forgotten how to just be herself." He moved closer, watching, understanding. Dawn in her eyes. "You came into this garage looking for repairs, but you found a home instead. You taught us about business and growth, but you learned about belonging and trust. And somewhere between oil changes and budget meetings, between corporate mergers and community programs, I fell in love with all of you, the CEO and the woman, who still gets excited about learning to change her own spark plugs." Sarah's hand had risen to her mouth, tears glinting in her eyes. From the shadows, he could hear sniffling, probably Margaret. Maybe Maria too. So, Alex reached into his pocket, drawing out the ring. "I thought it was fitting to do this here where our story began, where we learned that the most valuable things in life can't be measured in dollars or stock prices." He held up the ring, letting it catch the light. "I made this from parts of the engine that brought us together, because that's what love is. Taking ordinary moments and transforming them into something precious." Dropping to one knee on the concrete floor, Alex looked up at the woman who had transformed his life as surely as he had transformed hers. "Sarah Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell Enterprises, student mechanic, love of my life. Will you marry me?" The gathered crowd held their breath. Sarah stepped forward, tears flowing freely now, and touched the handcrafted ring with wondering fingers. "Only you," she whispered, "could make a spark plug into the most beautiful ring I've ever seen." Then louder, her voice ringing with joy. "Yes, yes to all of it, to mixing motor oil and board meetings, to teaching kids about both engines and economics, to building a life that's perfectly impossibly us." As Alex slipped the ring onto her finger, their hidden audience burst from the shadows, cheering and crying. Carlos and Maria led the students in a thunderous round of applause. Old Joe dabbed at his eyes with a bandana. Margaret hugged everyone in reach. The ring gleamed on Sarah's finger as she pulled Alex to his feet, kissing him in front of their gathered family. Biological and chosen, corporate and community, all the pieces of their lives fitting together like a perfectly tuned engine. "I love you," she whispered against his lips, grease stains and all. "I love you," he whispered back, corporate mergers and all. And in the gentle light of their transformed garage, surrounded by the people who had watched their story unfold, they held each other close, the mechanic and the CEO, proving that the strongest bridges are built by love. The garage deed lay on the conference room table of Mitchell Enterprises, freshly printed with both their names, Alexander Thompson and Sarah Mitchell, partners. It wasn't just a property document anymore. It was a symbol of their shared future, both personal and professional. "The board actually applauded," Sarah told him, still sounding surprised. "When I announced we were making the garage the official headquarters of our technical education division, Harrison himself seconded the motion." Alex traced their names on the deed, smiling at how right they looked together. "And they're okay, with the CEO working from a garage office 3 days a week. More than okay. They're calling it revolutionary corporate culture. Articles are already appearing in business magazines about the Mitchell-Thompson model of community-integrated leadership. They'd spent weeks planning this merger of their worlds. The garage would expand, but thoughtfully adding state-of-the-art training facilities while preserving the personal touch that made it special. Sarah's corporate office would remain downtown, but with a dedicated workspace for Alex, complete with a small workshop where he could keep his hands busy during strategy meetings. Maria's design for the new training center is impressive, Alex said, pulling out the blueprints their star student had drafted. She's got a real eye for combining practical workspace with teaching areas. Speaking of teaching, Sarah picked up a stack of applications. We've had over 200 responses to the instructor positions. Mechanics from all over the country want to be part of this program. The wedding plans were progressing alongside their professional merger. They'd decided on a ceremony in the garage, much to their corporate friends' initial shock. But after, Sarah had explained how she'd fallen in love there. Learning about engines and herself, even the most skeptical executives had come around. Carlos asked if he could detail your car for the wedding. Alex mentioned, his eyes twinkling. Says it's only right, since that breakdown brought you to us. Sarah touched her spark plug ring, which had become something of a legend in both corporate and community circles. Speaking of cars, did you see the latest youth program numbers? 87% employment rate for graduates, and 3 of our students are starting their own shops. With Mitchell Enterprises seed funding, Alex added proudly, you're revolutionizing how big business supports small dreams. A knock at the door interrupted them. Margaret, carrying what looked suspiciously like wedding fabric samples. If you two can pause the empire building for a minute, we need to decide on decorations. Though I still say the shop rags could make charming garlands. They laughed, but Sarah was already making space on the table. Their wedding would be like everything else in their lives now, a perfect blend of both worlds. The students would serve as honor guard, their coveralls pressed and spotless. Corporate executives would sit on decorated shop stools. The ceremony would be broadcast live to all Mitchell Enterprises locations, showing their workforce that community and corporation could do more than coexist. They could flourish together. Oh, and the youth center called, Margaret added. The first class of Mitchell-Thompson scholarships is ready to be awarded. They want you both there for the ceremony. Sarah reached for Alex's hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. Remember when I was afraid everything would change if people knew who I was? Everything did change, he reminded her gently, just not in the way you feared. Looking at the deed between them, at the blueprints for their expanding dreams, at Margaret fussing with fabric swatches, they could see the truth of it. Change had come not as a destroyer, but as a builder, taking the best of both their worlds and creating something stronger. The garage's night deposit box is overflowing. Again, Margaret reported. More donations for the scholarship fund. Seems your love story inspired people to believe in second chances and new beginnings. Sarah and Alex shared a look, remembering that first night on the highway. Who could have known that a broken timing belt would lead to such a perfect timing? In life, we should head back to the garage, Alex said, gathering the papers. The afternoon class is doing their first major engine rebuild, and I have a board meeting, Sarah added. But I'll be there for the end of class. Wouldn't miss their faces when they fire up those engines for the first time. As they walked out together, the deed safely stored with their shared dreams, they moved like 2 gears in perfect synchronization, different but matched, each making the other more powerful. Their love story had become more than just a tale of a CEO and a mechanic. It had become a blueprint for building bridges between worlds that only seemed different on the surface. Behind them, Margaret smiled at their retreating forms already, planning how to incorporate motor oil and corporate logos into elegant wedding centerpieces. Some matches, she thought, were simply meant to be, even if they needed a broken timing belt to bring them together. The new shop sign caught the morning sunlight. its fresh lettering declaring Mitchell Thompson Technical Education Center and Auto Repair. Below it, smaller letters read, "Where every breakdown is a chance for a new beginning." The garage doors stood wide open, transformed for the day with elegant drapery and twinkling lights, while the scent of motor oil mingled with wedding flowers. Sarah stood in what had once been Margaret's office, now her secondary headquarters, smoothing her unconventional wedding dress, ivory silk with delicate embroidery of wrenches and gears matching her engagement ring. Through the window she could see the gathered crowd, corporate executives in formal wear, chatting with mechanics in pressed uniforms, students proudly showing off their training bay to curious investors. Old Joe explaining the finer points of engine tuning to a fascinated board member. "Ready?" Margaret appeared, dabbing at her eyes. "Alex is waiting by the hydraulic lift, which I still can't believe you two chose as your altar, but somehow it's perfect." Sarah touched her spark plug ring, smiling. As ready as I was that first night on the highway, the music started. Not the traditional wedding march, but the sweet purr of a perfectly tuned engine, courtesy of Carlos and the advanced class. Sarah stepped out into the garage that had become her second home, her first home, her everything. Alex waited for her, handsome in his suit but wearing his shop jacket over it, his eyes bright with love and promise. Their students formed an honor guard, wearing their grey uniforms with pride, tools polished to mirror shine held high to form an arch. Harrison himself stood among the groomsmen, his corporate polish softened by genuine happiness. He'd become one of their strongest supporters after seeing how their unconventional partnership had transformed both the company and the community. "Friends, family, fellow mechanics, and distinguished colleagues," the minister began, fighting a smile at the unusual combination. "We're gathered here today in this place of healing. Healing for engines, yes, but also for hearts and dreams." Sarah and Alex barely heard the words, lost in each other's eyes and the miracle of their journey. Around them, their worlds had merged seamlessly. Maria discussing expansion plans with a venture capitalist, Tommy explaining hydraulic systems. To a tech industry reporter, Margaret and Thomas coordinating the day's logistics like old friends. When it came time for the vows, Alex reached into his shop jacket pocket. "Sarah, you came into my life like a luxury car with a broken timing belt. Beautiful, complex, and in need of something only I could give, the chance to be yourself." He slipped a second ring onto her finger, this one fashioned from the very and timing belt that had brought them together. "I promise to always be your safe harbor, your honest mirror, and your partner in all things, from boardroom to garage bay." Sarah's hands trembled as she drew out her own gift, a platinum wrench tie, clip inlaid with tiny diamonds. "Alex, you taught me that true worth isn't measured in stock prices, but in lives touched and hearts healed." She pinned it to his tie. "I promise to always keep my hands dirty with real work, my heart open to our community, and my soul honest, with the love that found me when I broke down on that highway. By the power vested in me," the minister concluded, "and with the blessing of both Mitchell Enterprises and the local Mechanics Association," this drew appreciative chuckles, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Their kiss was punctuated by the roar of engines, the students having arranged a symphony of perfectly tuned motors in celebration. Corporate photographers clicked away as confetti made from shredded service manuals floated down. Later, as they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, Sarah and Alex paused by her old sedan, now restored to showroom perfection but keeping its original timing belt housing as a reminder. "Ready for our next adventure?" Alex helped her into the car. "With you?" Sarah touched the spark plug ring that had started it all. "Always." They drove away under an arch of raised wrenches and designer umbrellas, their wedding sign catching the light one last time, "Where every breakdown is a chance for a new beginning." In the end, their love story wasn't just about a CEO and a mechanic finding each other. It was about the courage to be real, the power of community, and the truth that sometimes the best partnerships are forged in the most unexpected places, like a broken-down car on a lonely highway where two worlds collided and built something beautiful from the pieces.